talk to you about CCGs versus LCGs. And you can find some videos out there on this topic, but not a lot. So I figured I would go ahead and cover it before we got started with our ranking of the LCGs, FFG LCGs. So with the CCG model, it's the basic difference between the two is the distribution model. With CCGs, they deliver these booster packs with a number of cards. It's a small number of cards, I don't know, 8 to 12 or something like that, in each of them that are randomized across the packs. And then you go out and buy these packs to try and get get good stuff. They only put, potentially one rare in a pack, or maybe less than that, one uncommons in every pack. Some packs might have rares, things like that. And so they basically have the rares, uncommons, commons, and I don't know, there might be some other spectrums in between those of the type of cards, and obviously those rares are better. So what you're doing is you're going and buying a whole bunch of packs to try and get some stuff that's good. And people who are really competitive with CCGs will end up buying a whole booster box, right? Instead of just buying individual packs, because it gives you a better chance to get a more consistent amount of good stuff. So you buy a whole booster box. These booster boxes might cost you $100 or so, maybe more. And then you might, to really do it, you're going to buy 3 or 4 of them when these come out. So that's $300 to $400. You're going to get a whole bunch of the same common cards because they're in almost every pack. So you'll get a whole bunch of those. And then you might get one, you might get several different good rares, and then you might get the same rares sometimes. Just depends on the luck of your draw. Now that leads to you then having to go out and take the ones that you got doubles of for the rares potentially, and trading those to get another rare that you really want or another card you want. So there's that whole aspect going on there. With the LCG model, they deliver a core set, which this is one of the downfalls of the core set. You get one core set which doesn't have all the cards to where you can get 3. Some games you can only have 2 of each card, but 3 or 2 of each of the cards. They give you enough, where some of the cards in the core set are 3 cards, others are 2, others are 1. And so then you basically have to go out and buy as much as 3 core sets to get a whole playing set for competitive play of these core sets here. So that is one of the downfalls of the LCG model, which I'll get into later. But so the barrier to entry to really get to know if you really are into the game or not is 3 core sets to really get the full experience and get that consistency in your decks. Now, after the core set though, they deliver these expansion packs, and each of these expansion packs come in cycles. So they'll come in a cycle, and that cycle will have 6 packs. Each of those packs have 20 cards in them times 3, because you get 3 of every card. Most of the time, there's some exceptions where it's limit of 1 deck. They might do multiple limit of 1 per deck cards in a pack to make a set of 3. But as a whole, you're getting 20 unique cards times 3 for a total of 60 cards in a pack, running you about $15 a piece. And so you get these packs of cards, and you get a whole cycle, and now you have a kind of a themed cycle across 6 packs of 60 cards. And then they come out with deluxe boxes periodically, which oftentimes focus on a particular faction and really focus in, versus having to distribute those cards across all of the different factions. Some of these card games have 6 or 7 factions, maybe up to 8, and others only have, 6. 6 is usually the smallest amount, I believe, and then the rest, and some of them go as far as 8 factions in them. Now, so what happens then is you basically buy these packs, but you know what you're getting. You have the same opportunity to buy that $15 pack as anybody else does, and it comes out usually once a month. and then so you're spending 15 bucks a month instead of every few months or every quarter or whatever. A new Magic set comes out and you're spending 300 bucks and still might not get everything you want. So from that standpoint, LCGs offer that consistency of not necessarily, it's a difference. What they call in the CCG world is play to win, pay to win. Pay to win means the person who can spend the most money can oftentimes have better cards to have a better chance to win. I would call the LCG model pay to continue, right? So if you decided to stop right here at a particular cycle, then you could still be competitive within that cycle, the core set in that cycle, or 3 or 4 cycles, or whatever you have. You could still be in competitive play for that meta there. But if they continue to release packs and you went to a game store where people are playing with the newest cards, now all of a sudden you obviously are not going to have access to those new cards there. So it's really a difference between pay to win and pay to continue playing the game. And so for me, I do not want to spend that much money at one time. 15 bucks a month feels a whole lot better. And I don't really want to participate in that trading aspect and the luck. Like, it's like gambling, you know, you're buying cards and you're gambling to hopefully get what you want, and then able to trade them to get other stuff you want. And that whole scene right there doesn't really appeal to me. It does to many people. That gambling aspect of buying those booster boxes is something that gives a bit of adrenaline. It gives some excitement to folks. That trading aspect builds community. And so there's a lot of things going on in that CCG that a lot of people would like. For me, as a board gamer predominantly, and starting out as a board gamer, the expansions and LCGs are more like expansions. The cycles, the packs are more like expansions than, you know, the CCG model, which is really a full-on commitment. Again, it's not a perfect model though, right? So some of the pluses of the CCG model is the return on investment. If you really like if you amassed a large collection of Magic and you got a lot of rares and things like that, especially over a long period of time, those older cards get more and more unable for people to get them, and now all of a sudden those cards can sell for good money. I mean, you go back to like Black Lotus that's selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars from the early 90s. I'm not saying that there's going to be many more cards like that, because a lot more people are into it these days, but there still could be a chance, and you might have to wait 20 years, but you can make back all that massive amount of money that you spent on the CCG. With LCGs, a lot of times you're losing on your investment. If you put in, if the game went on for 7-8 years and you bought all the cycles and deluxes, you could be looking at, you know, selling your collection at a lot, as a lot. That's what we call a whole collection. You're selling your whole collection. You're going to sell that more than likely for a discount on what you paid for it. You might have lost hundreds of dollars on that. But there are exceptions to that. Some of the games, that's my cat there. Some of the games have certain packs that are worth a lot, such as in Star Wars the card game. There's this one pack called Allies of Necessity, especially those cards at the end of when the LCG's getting ready to come to an end and nobody knows it on that last cycle or so, the FFG ends up putting out less packs for that last one because they know it's coming to an end. And so then everybody wants those to complete their set, and can everybody get them? So now all of a sudden you get into scenarios where certain packs or deluxe boxes that aren't readily available become worth maybe as much as $150 for something that cost you originally $50. 15. But again, even in those scenarios, you'd have to piecemeal out your collection, which means probably the rest of it would be worth less. And so you're kind of still going to be losing money. So that's one of the pluses for the CCG model. It does add in that collectible aspect like baseball cards to where you're going to potentially get a return on your investment if you ever decide to quit playing Magic and separate from your cards. The next one plus for CCGs is the competitive support. The game stores, they make their money off of CCGs far better than any LCGs because people are having to buy a lot more product to collect what they're looking for. They get into trading cards, which means the gaming stores giving a premium on the amount they trade the cards for or sell them for, and they're paying you less because they got to make a profit on it. So all of that, and then they have these tournaments and drafts and things where you come in and pay $5 and they give you a pack or two, or $10 for a draft night, which happens almost every week at these stores, and they get 30 people in there buying those, and then they're buying other stuff. So this is basically what keeps our gaming stores alive, and therefore the support for them. And if you get into those that are really, you know, that's lasted a long time, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Now there's a new one, Flesh and Blood, which is looking pretty promising to have some staying power. If you get into those, you can probably have a lot better guarantee that this is going to continue on for a long time. And then you're not just going to have a situation where these, come on, let's go. Where you have a scenario where after 3 or 4 years, which is what happened to these, they lasted anywhere from 3 years for Conquest to about probably about 12 years for Lord of the Rings, but a lot of them are ending about 4 to 6 years after they've been created. So you're looking at not worrying about all of a sudden they stop making product, because as soon as they stop making product, people stop showing up to the game stores. You no longer have a group of people to play, a diverse group of people to play these card games with, except for a few exceptions, which I'll get into in later videos. So that is a plus of CCGs as well. They're the money maker. The board game stores support them. New players are constantly coming in, and you have a very good chance of having that for a long time and not worrying about them canceling on you. All right, and that goes into sustainability as well. Those 2 points are the same: competitive support and sustainability. Again, you also have that trading and collectability we already talked about. And then also with Magic and other CCGs, they have that jumping in point. LCGs have a problem with jumping in point because they don't put out product as fast, and therefore you end up having a kind of point where the card pool gets so big that if somebody wants to hop in, they got to buy 3 core sets, and then they got to buy all the stuff there, and you're talking about a massive cost to get in at that point. CCGs do a much better job of rotating out cards, so you can easily come in and you know, buy the newer stuff and just kind of wait for the old stuff to rotate out and have a chance to still play at at least a store level, right? You got store, regional, in Magic you got Pro Tours and World Championships, but in LCGs you've got basically store champions, regional champions, and then a world and a national champion. So regardless, you can definitely play at the store level with comfort and have a good time still, even though you don't have all the old stuff, and they'll eventually rotate those out. So I'd say jumping in point when the LCGs are alive, that is. And again, we'll get into dead CCGs in a minute. But jumping in point, I think, is a plus for CCGs as well. On the LCGs, you've got, it's cheaper for the most part. You got to buy 3 core sets, and each of those are running originally probably back in the day $35-40. So you're looking at about $100 to $120 to get your 3 core sets, and then after that it's $15 for each expansion each month, and then it is for a deluxe box it's going to be, you know, about 30 bucks for the deluxe box, but they usually don't deliver those but once a year or so. So it's definitely cheaper as you go along, and it's kind of spread out, and you're not worried about spending all the extra time to get all the stuff you want by trading and buying single cards and things like that. It's all about the game deck, building your deck and then playing the game is what it's all about. Now for me, the LCGs, I like the mechanics better. I've played Magic a couple of times. One thing I really dislike about a lot of collectible card games is, unless you've got cards to help you draw more cards, you're basically drawing one card per round. So you're only seeing one new card, and I hate that. All of these LCGs here offer ways for you to draw lots of cards. They all do it in different ways, but you're seeing more cards every turn. Game of Thrones is probably the closest. It still lets you draw 2 cards per turn, and then you have other card draw mechanics to help out, but at least it's 2 cards. Netrunner has a click system, an action system where you get 3 or 4 actions per turn, so you could spend your whole turn drawing cards. That freedom is what initially drew me to Netrunner in the first place. Other ones, which we'll get into in the future, have a beautiful way of doing card draw so that you can get multiple cards per turn and not just be stagnant and stuck with what you got. So I absolutely love that about LCGs, the FFG LCGs versus most of the collectible card games out there. And I haven't played a lot of them, so I'm not going to say most, but that's one of the things that really doesn't attract me of them. The theme. I find the theme and artwork from FFG stuff to just more appeal to me. But that said, there also are other LCGs out there that aren't FFGs, and I've played a couple of them. There's Doomtown, there's Ashes, Summoner Wars, and Rivals is a newer one about vampires. Summoner Wars right here, it's a good game. It's just not, it doesn't necessarily wow me, and so I would just rather play some of these other ones more. So that one's actually on the trading block, but that is a phenomenal LCG that they just revamped. It's way better than the first edition. Ashes has got the most beautiful art I've just about ever seen. Again, the gameplay it's not bad. I mean, it's a good gameplay, but it just, for me, once again, it fell short of the other 7 game, or at least 6 competitive LCGs that I have here, along with my other board games. So I kind of moved on from it, and I didn't necessarily give it a fair shake. I didn't play it as many times, but I was okay with letting it go. And then Doomtown I haven't played, but I've heard from many people it's a phenomenal game. So there's some other options out there outside of FFG LCGs, but the art, the theme, the mechanics of these are the ones I really love, and that's just a personal opinion. You know, other people would disagree, and that's fine on those things because that's subjective. So yeah, that's kind of the difference between CCGs and LCGs. I definitely myself prefer the LCG model. I prefer everything about it: mechanics, art, theme, distribution model. I like it all better, but that doesn't mean one is better than the other, and obviously you have to take those factors in whenever you're looking at getting into an LCG versus a CCG. The other problem is LCGs at this point, competitive LCGs, are dead. Now, I've mentioned this a couple of times before, what a dead LCG is, and what I mean by dead LCG is basically FFG stopped supporting it, right? So at some point, I'll just go into some high levels here. For Conquest, they ended up splitting up. FFG ended up splitting up with Games Workshop because they were in union there, which also is how they had Forbidden Stars here. That also never got an expansion. It's a board game. Any type of Warhammer universe stuff, FFG was in partnership with them at one point, and they ended up breaking that partnership. So now no more Warhammer stuff can be made. Unfortunately, I'm more sad about the Forbidden Stars game than I am about Conquest and Warhammer Invasion, even though Warhammer Invasion was done in 2014 and they broke up, I believe, 2017 or 2018, which ended up ending this one. Netrunner, they ended up... Wizards of the Coast, Richard Garfield, created the original game of Netrunner, not Android Netrunner, but Netrunner back a while ago. And they ended up getting the license for the Netrunner board game mechanics and partnered it with FFG's New World Android universe. And so at some point, Wizards of the Coast had to renegotiate with FFG how much they were going to charge them for that license, and they couldn't agree upon that price. So that prematurely ended Netrunner, because Netrunner was rolling still relatively strong. I think FFG might have wanted to get out of that one, but anyway, we'll get into that in other videos. The bottom line is, other of these games ended up just puttering out, and they just decided to stop making content, and that happens for a few reasons. FFG, especially in the early LCGs, made some major blunders from, I told you a pack's supposed to come out every month. Well, for Star Wars the card game, there was a nice delay from the core set to deliver more packs, and so that was a major problem with that one, which caused a lot of people to go ahead and leave and not continue on. So around, it went for some years, but at the end of the day, it ended up ending because, and then along the way, FFG also ended up making some pretty imbalanced stuff. It's hard, I get it. It's hard for FFG with their limited resources, supporting multiple of these LCGs, plus doing board games, to really to balance stuff before it gets released into the wild. But some design decisions also make mistakes that causes players to go ahead and leave the game, which means they don't have the people buying the product. And then also what I talked about earlier, the jump-in point, people getting into the game isn't going to necessarily happen as much once you get a large card pool kind of established. And so the competitive card games got a number of problems that end up causing them to kind of putter out, or some type of license issues like I talked about with Netrunner and Conquest, for them to have to end prematurely. So for one reason or the other, all these games ended up no longer being supported by FFG. That said, I wouldn't call many of these dead, except for the fact that you're not going to be able to go to a game store except for in large cities and find a group that's playing these games. And that really only counts probably at this point for Netrunner. You might be lucky enough to be in a city where some people are still playing Warhammer Conquest or Game of Thrones or Legend of the Five Rings, but it's pretty rare. Okay, but Netrunner, you've still got in the big cities, there's a good following. So if you're in bigger cities, you can probably find and get into that now. The other thing is that these communities, the fan-based communities, end up producing, a lot of times have ended up producing more content for these LCGs. So for Netrunner, there is a group called Nisi that is now actually producing more content and supporting tournament play. The majority of that happens online though, which isn't great for me, and I'm not in a huge city. There was a chance that we were going to get our local group, which I wasn't a part of that group originally, but there was a chance when they released a new core set that group was thinking about getting back into it, but it puttered out. So I'm basically down to either playing with some friends casually or going online and playing those games. But there's still amazing content being put out by Nisi. I'm talking about top level art, mechanics. Some of it's better than FFG stuff. I'd say most of it is. From a lot of perspectives, some of the art's better, some of the art's hit or miss, because you've got you're basically, a lot of the art is just getting, regular people to draw it, but others they actually pay some top dollars for some people who even did FFG art and other individuals that are renowned artists to do some of the cards. So it's really good. And with Legend of the Five Rings, they also have a community supporting them, and Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings. All of them have fan-made communities that are producing new cards, and they're people who really, really play the game and probably play the game on a competitive level. So you're actually getting better quality mechanics and balanced cards than when FFG was delivering them so often. So there's actually some real pluses to jumping into these and participating in those if you're interested in them. But again, you're lacking in the in-person communities once FFG stops supporting them. So these some of these are deader than others. Like Warhammer Invasion is pretty much completely dead. I'm sure there's some people somewhere who still play it, but for the most part it's dead. Some of them are not as prosperous as others. Again, Netrunner's probably the most prosperous, but Game of Thrones and Legend of Five Rings isn't far behind them. And Star Wars and Conquest have a small community that are still producing new cards and balancing and running tournaments, but it's very small and it's pretty much online. So that said, that is what a dead LCG is. And again, I ended up unfortunately not participating in LCGs because I was a board game snob back in the day when they were alive, and I've fallen in love with them, so I'm pretty much buying all of them up now. But the good news is I'm saving a lot of money by doing that, because for instance, I got Game of Thrones, which this isn't my Game of Thrones collection, it's just the core box here. I pretty much got everything that came out for Game of Thrones 2nd edition, minus a few things, for $250 from somebody selling their collection. And it's probably at least $800 to $1,000 worth of content if you buy it at MSRP at a game store. And all of this stuff was like that. Star Wars, for a while, a lot of the data packs were like less than $5, some of them. And I bought it all up. I did have to pay a premium for certain packs and things like that, but ultimately I got this for much cheaper than MSRP. Netrunner, when it first died out, I bought a collection for $600, and a full collection of Netrunner now is running from $1,200 to $1,500 a pop. So there's some real deals out there to get you a full collection all at once, and then you can work through that content at your leisure. So there's some pluses to getting into dead LCGs. The negative, again, is you're pretty much left to play online or play with a friend, which means you're not going to get the full experience because you're not able to sit in person with 6 to 12 people and just bounce around playing different people's decks, playing their play style, playing the decks that they created to do weird stuff. You don't really get the full experience, and I'm sad I missed it. But for the most part, there's still a lot of fun to be had with these games. So that is what the difference between CCGs and LCGs, and that is what a dead card game is. And next videos, we're going to get into me ranking the dead, or not dead, but these semi-alive LCGs and what they have to offer for different play styles, and what some of the differences are that makes it to where you could literally buy all of these and have totally different game experiences, from theme to mechanics and ultimate experience with each of them. So I hope you join me as I rank these games, and I look forward to seeing you there.